Aspirants, looking at the current affairs for 12/10/2018, the Hindu analysis, and these are the important news items to what is being picked up from the Hindu newspaper for today, and let's look at them in detail. The first one, the Reliance was chosen freely, says the result. So here we know there's a lot of exchange of talks to what has been happening from the India and also with respect to the French deal to what had been taken place. With respect to the French deal, even yesterday we saw that there was a media which made a statement that here this particular French deal and the Indian deal to what was happened, it was to be chosen as a Reliance defense in a trade-off. But here after the press meet here, the French military major is giving a statement telling that it was being chosen freely. So here again still the statements or exchange of talks has been happening on the same Rafale deal. So again this is just a development part to what we are seeing on the Dassault Aviation company, and that's the one which gave the right things now. And here you have the complete details to what is the delivery content, how it started, what is the range of it, and the entire concept. You can just look onto it. But right now we'll be seeing a small video on this particular aspects to explaining from the head to the toe, so that you can just look onto the video and you'll get understand them in much better aspects.
In April 2015, during Prime Minister Modi's visit to France, he suddenly announced a deal to buy 36 Rafale aircraft in a government-to-government deal.
भारत में फाइटर एयरक्राफ्ट की क्रिटिकल ऑपरेशनल नेसेसिटी का ध्यान में रखते हुए मैंने राष्ट्रपति जी से 36 रफाल जेट्स फ्लाई अवे कंडीशन में जल्द से जल्द दोनों सरकार के समझौतों के माध्यम से खरीदने की बात की है.
A few days later, the then Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar told the Parliament that he had cancelled the earlier negotiation process which was on for 126 Rafale fighters, which was initiated by the UPA government in 2008. The new deal worth Rs 59,000 crore for the outright purchase of 36 aircraft is now in the eye of a storm. Questions have been raised about the need to discard the negotiations for the acquisition of 126 Rafale aircraft from Dassault and to opt instead for the outright purchase of 36 aircraft of the same make from the same company. Opposition parties have alleged that the NDA government is buying the same aircraft under the new deal at a much higher price than the one that was being negotiated by the previous UPA government. Opposition has also alleged that the contours of the current deal favor a particular private Indian defence company and do not include transfer of technology. In the older proposal, 108 of the 126 fighters were to be assembled by the Bangalore-based Hindustan Aeronautics Limited.
राफेल मामले में कुछ ना कुछ गड़बड़ी तो हुई है. हमने प्रधानमंत्री से 3 सवाल पूछे हैं, जवाब नहीं आया. क्या दाम जहाज का दिया आपने? कैबिनेट कमेटी ऑन सिक्योरिटी से आपने पूछा था, हाँ या ना? और HAL से छीनकर आपने ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट एक बिजनेसमैन को किस बेसिस पे दिया?
The NDA government declined to share the cost of the Rafale fighters, citing the security agreement signed between India and France in January 2008.
If you tomorrow say you have bought missile from this country, give us the breakup of the cost. So the breakup of the cost will tell you what is the weapon system on that missile. What are the specifics? So it is in larger interest of India's security that price is never disclosed. That's responsible governance.
So as this debate rages, let's examine the arguments on both sides. Well, in several cases, costs have been shared. In others, those details have been kept secret for reasons of national security. The government, though, is duty-bound to share the full pricing details with the CAG and the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. Can we compare the two prices? Realistically, no. They are in different time frames. There are different weapon suits that are available on both the systems, both the platforms, and there are different kinds of guarantees that are given with both the deals. See, the government is very clear. It says it bought 36 aircraft because the number of fighter squadrons with the Indian Air Force are coming down very quickly. You know, Air Force requires 42 squadrons, is authorized 42 squadrons. It only has 31 and they will come down to 19 in a few years. It just wanted to make up those numbers. But I think what the government is very clearly not saying is that these aircraft have primarily been bought to deliver nuclear weapons, because the Mirage 2000, another French aircraft made by Dassault, is going to go out of service very soon, and they needed another aircraft of which that particular country, France in this case, would not object to if it was modified to deliver the nuclear weapons. See, the fact is that the private company, as the government has repeatedly explained, is chosen by the foreign vendor, which is the Dassault of France in this case. But it is also true that this company, this private Indian company, is a very new company which has no real experience or background in defense manufacturing. That's why those questions have been raised. See, the fact that the government has come out very strongly on this, the defense minister conducted a press conference in November in South Block, and it has issued a very strong statement a few days back, and where the government is very clearly claiming that it has bought these aircraft much cheaper than what the Congress government would have bought them for. It becomes imperative that government puts out certain figures to substantiate its claim, whether it is in terms of the bid prices, or if bid prices are not possible because of the Secrecy Act, then at least in terms of the benchmark prices which were decided by the Defense Ministry in both the cases. See, the real impact of this controversy is almost akin to Bofors in some ways. It puts the defense procurement process back. There's a setback because no bureaucrat or senior official is willing to enter into a defense procurement contract considering the kind of controversy it arises. And
so that's about the Rafale jet deal, and you would have got to know the details about it, and there's a whole story to what has been getting repeatedly there in your news parts. So that's about it. And the next news item, 9 killed as Titli batters the Srikakulam. So we know that there's a cyclonic storm Titli which has turned into be a very severe cyclonic storm, so which is making a landfall which has been very earlier out here, and this is actually getting intense into the rain and gales in the Srikakulam and Vizianagaram districts of Andhra Pradesh, and the Odisha's Gajapati and the Ganjam districts. So these are the areas which are being drastically getting affected with respect to the Titli, and you should know these are the names which is actually given by the 8 countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Oman and other countries which has been associated by, they have to give up like 8 names to the regionally specialized meteorological center which is actually put up in Delhi. As they gave the names would have been accumulated to 64, and this 64 names they would be taken with respect to where is the origination of this particular cyclone. Based on that, the names would be given. By knowing to the names, they'll understand what is the origination of this particular cyclone, so that the communication and also the disasters and also with respect to alerting the people, creating the awareness becomes very easy by naming these cyclones, and that's the reason we call it as Titli, so that the communications become much more better. So that is the background story to why we name the cyclones in written. So here we should also know that the cyclonic storm is actually having 5 categories, category 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So right now if you see here, it is actually with a wind speeds of 130 km. So this is actually under the second category. The second category is between 129 and 164 kilometers per hour. So this is actually with 130, which is a destructive category right now, and there is a lot of power loss, and also the uproots of the trees would be happening in a larger extent. So there was a time where it is also making the tilting of the entire trucks in Andhra Pradesh. So this is a devastation, and here as we discussed right now, the huts and the houses are being completely collapsed, the trees have been uprooted with respect to 130, which is under category 2. So if it's getting more devastated, it crosses more than that, then it will be under the category 3. So this is about it. So now let's look at the video where you'll be getting to know about how is the cyclone being formed. So this gives a holistic understanding to how it is being formed, how it is being passed on. So just look on to the video right now.
There are 3 basic stages in the life of a tropical cyclone: its origin or source, the mature stage, and the dissipation stage where it dies out. These occur in a continuous process, not as separate and distinct stages. Each stage may occur more than once during the life cycle as the strength of the cyclone rises and falls. It may reach land, weaken, then go back out to sea where it strengthens once more. The formation of a cyclone depends upon the following conditions coinciding: a large, still and warm ocean area with with a surface temperature that exceeds 26.5 degrees Celsius over an extended period. This allows a body of warm air to develop above the ocean's surface. Low altitude winds are also needed to form a tropical cyclone. As air warms over the ocean, it expands, becomes lighter, and rises. Other local winds blow in to replace the air that has risen, then this air is also warmed and rises. The rising air contains huge amounts of moisture evaporated from the ocean's surface. As it rises, it cools, condensing to form huge clouds about 10 kilometers up in the troposphere. More warm air rushes in and rises, drawn by the draft above. The rising drafts of air carry moisture high into the atmosphere, so that these clouds eventually become very thick and heavy. Condensation then releases the latent heat energy stored in the water vapor, providing the cyclone with more power. This creates a self-sustaining heat cycle. Drawn further upwards by the new release of energy, the clouds can grow to 12 to 15 kilometers high. The force created by the Earth's rotation on a tilted axis, the Coriolis effect, causes rising currents of air to spiral around the center of the tropical cyclone. It is at this stage that the cyclone matures and the eye of the storm is created. As the air rises and cools, some of this dense air descends to form the clear, still eye as the cyclone rages around it. The eye wall, where the wind is strongest, behaves like a whirling cylinder. Cyclones rotate clockwise in the southern hemisphere, anti-clockwise in the northern. The lowest air pressure in a tropical cyclone is always found at the center and is typically 950 millibars or less. The average air pressure at the Earth's surface is about 1010 millibars. Tropical cyclones have significantly lower air pressure than the air that surrounds them. The bigger the pressure difference, the stronger the wind force. One of the lowest air pressures ever recorded was 877 millibars for Typhoon Ida, which hit the Philippines in 1958, where winds reached 300 kilometers an hour. Once formed, the cyclone's movement or track follows a pathway away from its source, driven by global wind circulation.
So that was all about the formations of cyclones. So now let's move on to the next news item. 1 in 5 Indian children wasted, says at GHI. So here you are getting the reports from the Global Hunger Index, which is for the year 2018, and here they have ranked India to be as 103. In sense, its ranking is 103 out of 119 countries. So here it is almost with a score of 31.1, which was 7.17 points lesser than in 2000. But here this particular average of the global should be almost like 20.9. So we are getting into the worst situation. So we'll see them in detail. So here actually, as we discussed, like 1 of 5 children are under the age of 5, which have been under the wasted, which means that here the children are very lean, understanding that they have been very low weight for their height. So they're not as per to the height what they have to get into the weight structure. They've been very lean and not to be as a healthy kids, and this is actually reflecting to an acute undernutrition. So this is one of the important report to what has been coming from the Global Hunger Index of 2018, and here they're saying that one of the nation's most prevalent child wasting nation is actually South Sudan. And if you see here, out of 119 countries, we are under the 103rd. So which means that India is performing very bad when compared to the Global Hunger Index, and actually India has been slipped and it has been dropped 3 places from the last year. So last year it was around like 100, and now it's moved on to 103 out of 119 countries, where it has to take this category of the section or the rank to be very serious, because most of the children are under the undernourishment, which is not a good sign for the generations and for the future of India in Britain. So this is one important aspects, and you should also know like how are these particular reports, or on what basis are they making, or what are the main indicators which makes them to calculate the hunger levels. So here it is actually the calculation which is respected to the pre-reviewed publications which is actually been released by the World Hunger Life and also the Concern Worldwide, that is International Food Policy Research Institute, which is actually involved with the publication until this year. So the first indicator, they would start off with the undernourishment. So undernourishment is a condition where it is reflecting the insufficient calorie intake of a child. So this is below 5 years, so intake of the calories been very lower. And the next one would be the child wasting. So child wasting is like low weight for height. So this is a problem to what we are talking about. So children are being extremely lesser when compared to their height to what they have to be. So this is the situation. And when it comes to child stunting, there is a third such indicator where the low height for age, they are not being as per having a proper growth for their age, that is called as in stunting. And this is actually both the cases we are talking about the acute undernutrition, and this case it's a chronic undernutrition. And lastly comes the fourth indicator is a child mortality. So there is a death of the child in return to what is not been getting as in chronic undernourishment, what they have been completely not been nourished the way they have to be nourished on. So based on these four categories and indicators is what they would be listing and ranking the countries in Britain. So on that basis, India is actually under 103 out of 119 countries. So if you see here again, this was a kind of a percentage of undernourished people with the population has actually dropped to, actually it was been from 14.8% in the year 2018 from 18.2% in 2002. So here the undernourished people have been dropped. The child mortality has been actually even become lesser with 9.2 was the earlier one, but right now it's 4.3%, and child stunting, which is like 54.2% to 38.4%. Even this has been a slighter changes, but if you see here with the respected to the child wasting, this has been very badder, and this is actually increased. It is actually increased with 3%, where not 3, more than that. So 17.1% in the year 2000 it stood at, and it has increased to 20, and now it stands at 21%. And if you see what is the worst performance in the entire country, South Sudan, and South Sudan's child wasting is 28%, and we are just having a difference of just 7%, and India stands with 21% in the year 2018. So which is not a good sign again, and here the child wasting is very high when compared to the other countries in South Asia. And this is actually a kind of a critical public health emergency which has to be taken into consideration. And also the children's which are being reported is between 0 to 5 months are the ones who are being under a greater risk, and here they have to be given a lot of attention to give a good number of birth outcomes, and also the breastfeeding is very important for the child to get the proper nourishment. And the year that also spoke about one important aspect which was associated with child wasting is that where the low maternal body mass index, where they are suggesting that the focus has to be given to the nutritional status of the mother when she is pregnant. So during pregnancy, the mother's nutritional status has to be taken into consideration. So the more the status has been taken into consideration, which means that the body mass can be actually worked well. So if the mother gets a good nutrition, the child also would be getting a proper nutrition to what is being transmitted from mother to a child. So this is another area to what they have been focusing right now. So this is about the standard, and UPSC would give you all a question, and they'll also ask you all to which of the important report talks about the child wasting or undernourishment or a child stunting. You should know it's about the Global Hunger Index 2018. And here you have a graphical pictorial part, you can just look on to them. So that's about it. And moving on to the next news item, that is the antibiotic resistance, which has become a superbugs right now. So this is actually the problem where the entire world has been facing, and this is creating an alarm toward the entire worldwide. So here the issue is with respect to the world's biggest animal drug company, which is actually accused of double standards, and this is actually exposing the consumers in India to get into higher levels of risk. So why is it making the Indian markets and Indian consumers to be under a higher risk? Because of selling the antibiotic for the purpose of making the animals to go faster and more faster. So this has actually been banned in Europe and also the USA. So this particular company Zoetis, which are just producer of the veterinary medicines. So here they are actually supplying the Indian farmers with an antibiotic to help their animals grow faster. So this is actually the medicine which has been actually banned in Europe and USA, but these people have been doing it back in India again, though it has been banned it has been banned by the World Health Organization because it is very highly prevalent when compared to the resistant bacteria. It has a very good resistant bacteria power in that, so which means that it can infect the humans and also cause deadly and untreatable infections. So resistant by a kind of an antibiotic resistance means the concerned bacteria, they would know how to thrive and live even after giving the antibiotic. So this is a situation to what is being done, and here actually the company, they have stopped advertising the antibiotics as a growth promoters, because here the American farmers 2 years back itself they had banned it, telling that this shouldn't be advertised, and here they are still continue to sell it directly to the Indian farmers by claiming that to be as an Indian website, and also the animals growers to make them to bigger and also the faster space. So this is a problem right now. So they are actually making a double standards and selling to the Indian market. And one such state in India is actually Maharashtra, which has actually banned this indiscriminate use of the antibiotics in agriculture. And this is a unnecessary use of antibiotics, because this is actually used in human medicines and also the agriculture. And this is the area where they are actually giving for the faster growing part of an animal rather than treating the diseases. So this is actually contributing, as we discussed about the resistant bacteria, where the bacteria are learning how to even resist onto the antibiotic which is supposed to kill them. So they are able to resist that particular antibiotic, and it is estimated that 1 lakh babies a year in the country are being dying from the infections of the resistant bugs. So this is a present situation, and it is also believed that worldwide it's been killing 7 lakh people. So accordingly, the British government, which has commissioned a review in 2016, and it called for an antibiotic resistance, one of the greatest threat to the public health. So here we have the WHO and also the World Organization for Animal Health and the FAO, that's Food Agriculture Organizations, which has called for a worldwide ban. So this is for the use of antibiotics, which is becoming completely dangerous structures right now, and this is actually already been, as we discussed, in the USA and EU, which has been banned right now. So this is actually creating a threat of resistance throughout the country. So you should also know, like the last hope of an antibiotic to what is being used right now is the colistinus. So this is the one which is being given at the last stages, where it is to be treating a people with a very serious illness. But if this illness is being given off right now, and we don't have a advanced kind of a medicine which can be given as an antibiotic. So if this itself, when the bacteria are being able to thrive and live it for a long time, then we don't have another substitute of giving an antibacterial. So this is a current situation where it might make the people to get more burdened on, or the deaths might happen in a longer, or there would be a prolongation of the diseases, and that might also spread to the other rest of the people. So again, they're saying that this Zoetis, which is being the growth promoters, which contains this colistin, a number of the major Indian poultry companies have been found to use this particular drug, and this is actually the one which is spreading the fear, because this is a last hope to what we have, and this itself is being used as a drug, and this is spreading more of fear, and this is one of the defense against highly resistant infections to what it can be used. So if this is being given at the first stage and to the second stage, to what is that we would be giving in the last stage. This is a concern, and this is actually going out for an outright ban of this colistin use on the farms. So this shouldn't be used hereafter. And so here we are also talking about the bacteria which is actually conferring to the bugs which has been exposed to the drug, and this is actually sending the shockwaves through the medical community in 2015. So as we discussed, this was something which was discovered in 2015, and that started creating a panic among the medical field, and they are not having a substitute. That's the most important problem out here, and this transfer will actually accelerate the spread of the resistance of the colistin, and further it will be boosting the rampant use of this antibiotic on the farms of in many countries. So taking this into consideration, we have the Timothy, a professor of the Cardiff University, who has actually made this discovery in year 2015, and he has called for a worldwide ban on this particular colistin which is used in agriculture. So if we ban this at this point of time, we are actually not allowing the bacteria to get adapted to what is called as an antibacterial. So they are getting resistant. We don't want to do that, and that is the main concerns right now. And here you have the causes of antibiotics. You can just look on to them. So what the guidelines the WHO has given in written, so how it is being done on other aspects. So here you have the details, and that's all about it. And the next news item, Indians top list of overstayers in UK. So here we have the story to what had happened with respect to the Britain's Trade Secretary. This particular earlierly the year should actually link the decision of excluding the Indians from a relaxation of the student visa. So this had happened a couple of months back, which is requiring the cooperation of the two countries to return to an illegal immigrants, including India's failure to sign an MOU with the UK. So the MOU with the UK was actually being not done, and India had to fail to do it, and this was one of the important aspects to what the Britain Trade Secretary had brought in earlier this year. And they were also talking about that most of the Indian peoples have been overstaying here, and those figures went on to be as 1 lakh, and again in reply the Indians Chatham House had said that how can that be, it should be actually lower than to what you said as a figure. From where did Britain get this all these figures, and this is not a true figure, is what the Chatham House from India had given a reply in written. So here is where the entire problem started with respect to it. So now here the UK is saying that India's accounts for the largest number of the individuals staying in the UK illegally, and the number of those subjected to forced returns in India has fallen by 50% in 3 years. So this has been coming from the Britain's Foreign and the Commonwealth, and here the problem is about the visa overstays, which has been actually highlighted by the department in its submission to a British parliamentary committee. So the global that's a global Britain and India inquiry into the post-Brexit relationship within India is going to get released very soon by now. There's something where we're looking out to how the cooperation can be done between the Britain and India in near future. And meanwhile, we have the tensions, as we just discussed about. This is how the story began off, and now there is a submission which has been coming from the UK and Indian Business Council, which is actually warning the Britain's stance on immigration, and that has been characterized India to be as a directly hostile message that is actually suggested that Indian citizens were not welcome to the UK anymore. So this is again a kind of an warned to what has been getting a kind of a message which is clearly telling that they don't want to welcome the people back into their country anymore, and this is one of the decisions which has been excluded India from the relaxation of the student visas process. This was one of the citings which has been coming there, and here they were also talking about the council which called for India to be included on the list of the countries which has actually been reducing the student visa application procedures, and also reintroductions of the ability to work for 2 years after graduations. So this is one of the important council which is giving a suggestions to how can India be treated and to get listed into the countries where it is reducing the student visas in return. So this is about the story, and we should also know that what is the IT body actually talking about. So here in our country we have an apex IT body, is an NASSCOM, which is actually warning the restrictive immigration system, which is actually limiting the opportunities for the global talent, which would be hitting the economic growth and also the productivity of the Britain in near future. So it is completely restricting the immigration system, means they are actually avoiding the global talent. So they are not allowing them to get into their economy, or it is rather the economy will not be growing or the productivity would not be seen in return. And NASSCOM also stressed that it is a need to treat the movement of highly skilled workers who came to UK on a short-term basis under the intra-company transfer scheme. And there is a trade policy and not an immigration issue. So there's some skilled workers getting into the UK is something where we call it an intra-company transfer, and there's nothing to do, we call it as an immigration issue, is another highlight issue which has been coming from the NASSCOM, and the movement of such workers had been crucial in driving Britain's competitive advantage. So NASSCOM also made its submission stating that a little evidence, there was no adding a little more evidence to suggest that they had no any negative impact on the wages or employment prospects of the domestic workers. So here we have the Royal Commonwealth Society, which has actually won the state of Indian visas into the UK was ABSU, and it also retreated its call for the Indian visitors to be given a condition, similar condition to what it was being given to the Chinese tourists who had been able to get a 2-year multiple entry visa at nearly 75% lower cost than the others. So here they are saying that the Royal Commonwealth Society has actually spoken about to what it can be done with respect to giving a similar condition to what has to be given to the Chinese tourists. So the things might sound better, and in the recent years UK appears to be neglecting the India's relationship in the favor of fostering the better relation with China. So here the UK is making a shift from the relationship from India to China, and that's the reason the most of the benefits to what we used to get, and now it has been denied. And here there are a few important areas to where they are trying to focus on. How was it and how is it right now? And again coming back to the Foreign Office counter, so this is again it's actually made a submission, and it is highlighting that it was a key achievement on the visas of Indian nationals, and it also said that the Britain had more visa centers in India than any other country in the world, and Britain was also issuing more skilled worker visas to India than any other countries in the world. So this completely combined of 90% of the Indian national who had applied the visa, and they were very successful in return as well. So this was something where the highlighting which is coming from the Foreign Office, and again the Global Britain, as we discussed in the earlierly, the Global Britain and India's inquiry which has been taken care, and they are looking out for an opportunity where they can get the cooperation between India and beyond Brexit. behind Brexit, India can get cooperated with the UK, and this is one of the evidences, and this is looking out for more of those expected evidences to be coming from the global Britain and India. So once it produces later this month, the things would be more soundable and you would be understanding to in detail. So what is the stand of India and what is the stand of UK, and how much is the contributions and how well is the relationship between the UK and India and Britain. So that's all about the story about the Indians overstayers part. And next we have is the payment players told to stick to deadline on data storage. So we know that in April 2018, that is in 6th of April, the banking regulator, that the RBI, had asked all the players to ensure that the entire data which has been relating to the payment systems which has been operated are being stored in India. So this has to be stored in the system right in India, and this would include all the end-to-end transaction details, informations collected or carried or which has been processed as a part of the message of the payment instructions, which has to be maintained in India locally, and this should be completed with the compiled deadlines by October 15th. So as we know that October 15th is getting headed off. So now they're saying that here the payment system players, they have to adhere by the 2018 October 15 guideline for storage of the data locally back in India, and they're not looking for any sort of an extension or for any sort of an excuse from these companies. So that they don't want to give any excuse from the company, and they have to follow to what the RBI has given as a deadline. And here again information which is saying that the sources that 80% of the 78 players have done with what the RBI had asked them to have a localization of the data back in India. So it is all the Amazon, Alibaba, WhatsApp, they have been compiled with the RBI norms, and only few players which they have to come across to what they have to do is the compiling. They have not done the compile to head to what the RBI had given as a kind of an guidelines or a regulator which has been asked them to do. It's only few percentage of the companies which has to do, that's a players, but majority of them have done. So this is something where it's been a good number, and here again a warning where the RBI is saying that not to have any sort of an extensions. So here the central bank has not given any kind of an hint or indication to extend the deadline to what has been given on October 15. So it wants it to get fixed on that set day itself. There's no clue on what it has to be done in case if they don't do, there's nothing as such instructions which has been come out right now. So this is all about it, and they have to adhere to the important aspects and the compilations to what the RBI has been given. That's all about it. That's it. And the question for the day, as we discussed about the global hunger index, just find out what it is. Secondly, the rivers of peninsular region. So again, this part becomes more important for your geography perspectives. So that's all about it, and these were the important news items for 12th of October 2018. Thank you.